Guys, what we're going to be talking about today is the beginning of Spanish voyages of exploration, including this guy Columbus. Here are the goals for the video. Once again, I recommend that you write these questions down and try to answer them as you watch the rest of the video. So let's start by talking about Portugal's main rival, which was the Kingdom of Castile. And so in the mid-1400s, Portugal was not the only state that was trying to explore the African coast. The Kingdom of Castile was Portugal's neighbor and was in the exact same situation as Portugal. They were far away from the spice trade. They had all these new technologies like the caravel and the compass and cartography, and they wanted to go the same way as Portugal to get to India, that is, down the African coast. Castile's desire to explore Africa becomes even stronger when Portugal starts bringing back a bunch of gold from Africa around 1470, and Castile moves in to try and get some of this gold and to get in on this trade. Of course, Portugal doesn't like this, Castile coming in and trying to steal its trade, so this leads to war between these two kingdoms. So, when the war breaks out in 475, Spain tries to capture as much African territory as possible. But it doesn't really go so well for Spain, and by 1479, the Castilians are defeated, and they are forced to sign the Treaty of ALCÁCOVAS, I think that's how you would say that, which makes it illegal for Castilian ships to explore the African coast. So basically it seems like Portugal wins. They get the monopoly on exploring Africa, and it seems like they're going to be the ones who get to India and get all the spices and all the money. So Spain has lost. I mean Castile. It's not known as Spain yet. But anyway, it seems like Castile has lost and they're going to be out of the exploration business. But Castile actually makes a big comeback and eventually emerges as the dominant kingdom on the Iberian Peninsula and also as the dominant exploring and imperial nation. It all starts in 1469, which is actually 10 years before Castile loses to Portugal. When this happens, the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon are united after the marriage of King Ferdinand of Castile and Queen Isabella of Aragon. And this eventually leads to the formation of the Kingdom of Spain. In 1482, after their marriage, Ferdinand and Isabella invade the Islamic kingdom of Granada, which is at the southern tip of the peninsula. And they actually managed to conquer all of this territory by 1492. Once they have finished this, they declare that Spain is going to be a Christian nation, and they proceed to kick out all Jews and Muslims who do not immediately convert to Christianity. Once the war is completed and they've begun converting all of their territory to Christianity, they turn their attention once more to the goal of exploration. And since the route to India along the coast of Africa is blocked by the Portuguese, the French, the kingdoms, Ferdinand and Isabella decide to go along with this guy Columbus's idea of sailing around the world to get to India instead of sailing around Africa. Okay, so Ferdinand and Isabella decide to go with Columbus, and Columbus sets out westward. And he has a tiny fleet of 3 ships, 2 caravels, and 1 carack, which is basically just a slightly larger version of the caravel. And the voyage begins on August 3rd, 1492, when he sails from Spain. He makes a quick pit stop in some islands in the Atlantic called the Canaries, where the Spanish have set up a base. And then from there, he sails out and reaches the Caribbean islands on October 12th. And so he stops first at the Bahamas, which he believes is Japan, and then he sails on a little bit further to Cuba, which he believes to be the coast of China and India. These islands that he discovers are populated by friendly indigenous people who offer to trade with Columbus, and who Columbus believes to be Asian people, aka Indians. Of course, they're not actually Indians. But so, who were these people that Columbus called Indians? Well, the main thing that Columbus discovered about them pretty quickly is they did not have the precious spices that he wanted. At this time, stuff like black pepper and ginger and cinnamon was as valuable as gold and silver. And that's what he was really hoping to find. But it turns out these guys didn't know what he was talking about, and they didn't have any of that stuff. But they did have lots of other cool stuff. And Columbus returns to Spain with ships filled with exciting new stuff. Stuff like turkeys, pineapples, tobacco, and chili peppers. Also, hammocks, apparently. These guys had come up with the hammock. Pretty cool. But so anyway, Columbus returns to Spain as a hero, believing that he has discovered a new route for the king. And he writes a letter to the king in which he insists that he has found Asia, and he claims that it is a land filled with good harbors and abundant gold, which, of course, is not true. There was really not very much gold at all in the Caribbean islands. So really, Columbus had not reached Asia, but rather he had stumbled upon a whole new continent filled with its own civilizations, cultures, and treasures. And tomorrow we're going to be learning more about what was actually going on in the Americas at the time that Columbus stumbled upon them. So, Spain has discovered a new route to the Indies, it believes, and it wants to begin claiming and trading with these territories. But Portugal is upset by this because they think that they have secured rights to all exploration with their previous defeat of Castile. So they prepare a big fleet of ships to go claim the new lands for themselves. Spain doesn't want to fight another war because it thinks Portugal would probably beat them again. And so instead, Spain goes to the Pope and asks the Pope to recognize the lands that they have discovered. The Pope decides to help Spain, and he gets Portugal and Spain to peacefully negotiate a division of the entire non-Christian world into two halves. So how it works is they sign this thing called the Treaty of Tordesillas, and they draw a line down the middle of the earth, and everything to the west of that line, most of the Americas, goes to Spain. Spain just gets all of that. To the right, that is the east of the line, Portugal gets everything. So that means that Portugal gets all of Africa and access to India and other stuff. Of course, the earth is round, so at some point they'll meet on the other side of the earth and divide the earth up that way as well. But so the Treaty of Tordesillas basically shows us how arrogant Portugal and Spain had gotten at this point. They believed that with a simple line on a map, they could claim territory that people had been living in for tens of thousands of years. But so anyway, that's the end of this video. And what we're going to look at tomorrow is what had been going on in America this whole time before Columbus got there. And then we're going to look at what happens to the Americas once the Spanish show up and start setting up their own colonies. I hope you found this interesting, and I hope that you can answer these 4 questions. See you guys tomorrow.